Magandang hapon po. Good afternoon. Kayo ay nakikinig dito lamang sa Radyo Migrante. O diba, heto na naman tayo. Ako po si Waynes, kasama nyo sa kwentuhan at kulitan, pati na rin sa pagserbisyo sa bayan.
Hello ulit mga kaibigan. Ako po si Ems. Makakasama nyo ulit for this week. Ano po ang lunch nyo today?
Ayun nga, ano nga ba naman ang lunch nyo today? At habang nagla-lunch kayo, samahan nyo kami sa ating episode 6 ngayong April 16, 2023 para sa mga usaping nakasentro sa ating kalikasan, nature, kapaligiran, environment, at lupa, land. Follow nyo na rin kami sa aming Instagram at Facebook para makakuha kayo ng mga updates. Hanapin nyo lang ang Radyo Migrante Toronto. Maaasahan nyo ang mga paborito nyong segments tulad ng Filipino Word of the Week, performance break, at pati na rin ang PULSO.
In our second half of the show, you will be able to listen to our feature interview with Dr. Chandu from Tatalakayin at Usapan segment. And we will then list our community listings at magkukulitan habang we end off the show.
Parang ang saya ng ganap na yan, ha? At ang dami rin nating matututunan. So, mga listeners, huwag kayong aalis. Dito lang kayo with Radyo Migrante. At ang ating top 3 news for this week, para sa unang balita, from Japan Times, balikatan exercises happen from April 11th to April 25th. Mula sa April 11 hanggang sa April 25, magaganap ang largest balikatan exercise to date, kung saan higit pa sa 17,000 US soldiers ang pupunta sa Pilipinas para sa joint military training with the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Mga people's organizations, patuloy ang pagresista sa mga lumalaking presence ng US military sa Pilipinas. Nabasa ko nga, nasabi ng International League of People's Struggle, these exercises are nothing but a blatant display of U.S. imperialism's military intervention and aggression in the country and region. They are aimed at strengthening the U.S. domination and control over the land, resources, and people of the Philippines, and undermining the Filipino people's sovereignty and self-determination. End quote.
Yes, and with the exercising of Filipinos against the militarization and these exercises, balikatan exercises, there has been a wave of arrest of students who have been criticizing the exercising, including students from UP, and also just recently I just got the news of 2 individuals in Cagayan that have been arrested just recently for speaking against the exercises. So just as a note that, two of youth activists have been released today, but there continues to be waves of arrests of students who spoke out against the balikatan exercises.
Thank you for that update, Ems. Alam mo, it really does raise the question then of how are these military trainings helping the Filipino people when we continue to see na tumataas ang military presence sa iba't ibang area sa Pilipinas. Ito rin nabalitaan ko, nito lang din, galing sa Bulatlat. 250 families have been displaced as military threatens to bomb Rizal community. At sa ngayon, talagang subaybayan natin yung kwento na yan, kung paano siya mag-de-develop dahil kailangan nating bantayan at bilang mga Pilipino kailangan nating bantayan kung anong nangyayari sa ating mga kababayan. Para naman sa pangalawang balita from Rappler, police generals covered up cops' arrest in massive shabu bust. Nitong April 10, lumabas mula kay Department of the Interior and Local Government or DILG Secretary Ben-Hur Abalos na mayroong mga pulis na sangkot sa pag-cover up sa pag-aresto kay Policeman Master Sergeant Rodolfo Mayo Jr. Siya ay isang intelligence officer of the Drug Enforcement Group ng PNP dahil sa kanyang pagkasangkot doon sa 6.7 billion pesos o 990 kilograms worth of shabu. Doon siya nahuli. Nasuspinde ang 2 police generals at 8 police officers para sa kanilang paglabag sa batas dahil sila ay sangkot doon sa allegedly covering up the arrest of policeman Mayo Jr. At para naman sa pangatlo tuning balita from Philippine-Canadian News, Canada creates new pathway for skilled refugees to address labor shortage. Noong isang linggo, ibinahagi ng Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship na si Sean Fraser ang planong magbukas ng bagong economic pathway this summer para mapabilis daw ang pag-hire ng skilled refugee workers and other displaced individuals upang mapagtuunan ang labor shortage umano sa iba't ibang key sectors dito sa Canada.
Oh, it's really, you really see that, the Canadian state ignores the labor issues and clamor for better working conditions. For example, the healthcare workers, truckers, delivery drivers, who continue to fight for decent wages and better working conditions to increase retainment. They have workers who are trying to also apply for permanent status, and there are workers who continuously are being, who face imminent deportation. What do we see? It's not about the retention of those workers, but to just get faster employment from other countries. So,
yes, and very timely discussion talaga ito dahil nga parating na ang May 1, Mayo 1, International Workers Day. Meron kaming announcement about that mamaya sa ating community listing. Patuloy po kayong nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante dito sa Toronto's Best Filipino Community Program, Vibe 105. Natunghayan po ninyo ang mga balita at ngayon naman magbalik tanaw tayo sa kasaysayan at kultura ng Pilipinas. Sige, pakinggan po natin.
Hello everyone, my name is Ems and welcome to Filipino Word of the Week, where we will share a new Filipino word every other week from different languages in the Philippines. Alam nyo ba, sa Pilipinas, there are approximately 130 Philippine languages as validated by the Komisyon sa Wikang Pilipino. The main languages include Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano, Hiligaynon, Waray, Bicolano, and many more. And for this week, we bring to you the Tagalog word Kalikasan, or in English, nature. Tara, let's Waynes, gamitin natin sa sentence nito. Ano bang sentence? I'll throw it to you first and then I'll go after.
Sige, mauna na ako. My sentence is, our kalikasan, our nature. Our kalikasan is our treasure. And really, this connects so well with our previous featured interviews with Ate Lourdes, who is a migrant worker from a peasant family in the Philippines, and also with Danilo Ramos, who is a peasant advocate, and how our nature gives us so much for our survival as a human being. And it's really, and when you say that something is a treasure, you have to protect it. And so it's just such an important conversation of like, how do we sustain our beautiful nature? How do we sustain our kalikasan?
Maraming salamat, Waynes. And when you said that, truly land is life, diba? When we see that, the gravity of that is much more for farmers and peasants in the Philippines. And in connection to that, land is life for many Indigenous people as well. So I'll connect my next sentence to this. Indigenous people around the world are often the frontliners of our kalikasan. As I kind of mentioned earlier, and you were talking about our connection to the land and the way that we protect it, it's primarily our Indigenous people around the world who are the frontliners of who defends and protects our kalikasan. And this right now, I think it's a timely kind of conversation because it reminds of us the hot topic of Apo Wangod being in the cover of Vogue recently, right? Highlighting how much Indigenous cultures try to continue to survive and resist of of their culture being removed or dying. And so, this is a great representation for Indigenous people in the Philippines. Yet we also have to look at, what are the root issues of why perhaps Indigenous cultures are perhaps fading away? What is the role of exploiting the land? What is the role of extracting the land have to do with the withering away of, the cultures of Indigenous peoples around the world?
Grabe. Yes. I like how you connected everything. May time pa ba tayo for another sentence?
Tingnan natin. I think isa na lang. Very
sige.
quickly.
Siguro
and then
quickly.
We'll connect it.
Sige. And this, I guess, also connects with your sentence din naman, ah. Okay. So, ito siya. The ongoing intensive mining and overproduction of clothing factories are contributing to the destruction of our kalikasan. So,
yes.
And that really is also from the recent the recent finding that Canada's watchdogs on Canadian businesses in other countries are actually ineffective.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we see how exploiting workers does not just exist in Canada, but also the way that corporations are exploiting workers abroad and outside the country. And that brings us to the end of our Filipino word of the week. So maraming salamat sa pagkikinig, and join us again next week to learn more about our Filipino languages around the Philippines.
Talagang mag-tune in ang mga kababayan natin sa segment na yan, Ems, dahil it's such a good way to expand our vocabulary at also to learn about what's going on in the Philippines and in Canada. So maraming salamat, Ems. At para sa susunod na segment, lumubog tayo sa ating kulturang Pilipino. At ngayon, makakasama niyo po muli ako, si Waynes. Nais niyo bang makadiskubre ng mga makabuluhang kanta at tula mula sa iba't ibang musikero at makata? Ang segment na ito ay nagsisilbing espasyo para sa iba't ibang pagtatanghal ng mga talento ng ating kababayang Pilipino. Para sa week na to, ang feature song natin is actually mula sa grupong Kordilyera's Dap-ayan ti Kultura iti Kordilyera or DKK. At ang kanta nila, ang pangalan ay Pagay o Rice. And this song talks about the traditional rice growing practices of Kordilyera indigenous farmers. Pagay was composed by Luz Membrot and performed by Dap-ayan ti Kultura iti Kordilyera or DKK. Sa English, Center for Kordilyera People's Culture. Yan ang kanilang grupo. DKK was established in 1991 to serve the people through the arts and to carry out cultural performances for the public. Halina't pakinggan na po natin ang Pagay performed by Salidummay DKK. Salidummay ay diway.
Tinang na magatanganda, inalaka, Salidummay ay diway. Manalong asin na ay panakalugising ng bay, manugawan ti serbinan yang ata, igapuna, Salidummay ay diway.
Ang ganda talaga nung kanta, di ba? Alam niyo, i-translate ko yung ibang lyrics para sa inyo. Yung isa sa mga sinabi nila, early at dawn, we head for the fields, stumbling along the way. That's life for us in the countryside. Full but exhausting. Tapos sabi rin nila, the peasants sigh from labor that is unpaid. And let us hold accountable our oppressors, the landlord class, and others like them. Talagang, I really look forward on learning more about the culture, livelihood, and the struggle of the people of Kordilyera for their right to land and basic services. Kasi talaga alam natin na our indigenous people in the Philippines and honestly everywhere in the world, they're not only protectors of land, but they are also caretakers of land. They know best on how we can protect it and care for it and do sustainable farming and do sustainable harvesting. So we should learn from them. So sana na-enjoy nyo ang kantang ito. Muli, ako si Waynes. Lagi niyong maaasahan na maghahandog ng makabuluhang musika, tula at marami pang iba na nagdidiwang ng kulturang Pilipino. Dito lang sa Radyo Migrante, Vibe 105.5 FM.
Para naman sa ating pulso ng migrante segment, pakinggan natin ang mga saloobin ng mga kababayan na dumalo sa Bayan Congress noong September 16 to 18.
Ana Ilagan.
My name is Gab Bellius. I'm from Vancouver, BC.
Ako si Casey Gagatiga. I am a part of Anak Bayan, Ottawa, and also Migrante, Ottawa.
My name's Mika. I'm a new member of the Anak Bayan, Manitoba.
Hi, my name is Simon Bondoc. I organize with Anak Bayan, Alberta, and I organize from Treaty 7 territory.
So how are you liking the Bayan Conference?
I'm enjoying it, really. I've met a lot of people. I didn't know that there's such a community where I just went here and all of a sudden all these people are just like so welcoming, so open-minded, and it's just great. Like it's been such an interesting, journey for me so far. It's been 2 days only, but still, like I feel like I belonged here when I got here.
Well, so far I've learned the importance of truth-telling and storytelling and how it parts very real stories for us to learn from in the reality that we're in now. I've learned the importance of youth power, youth organizing, and how the youth aren't the future, they're the now.
As a youth worker working in the warehouse industry, driving heavy machinery, we are heavily underpaid for the skills that we currently have. And it's just saddening that private industries use fear and manipulation to keep the workers divided and trying to one-up each other just so that they could prosper in very individual ways. So, I mean, a system that cares more about the people would be more, would make progress so much faster because we're just trying to help each other out.
Some Filipino youth are disconnected nga from their culture and from what's happening in the Philippines. So it's important to seek out those people, find those people, and like bring the struggle to them, because one way or another they're still connected to the struggle that's happening back home.
Due to the 3 basic problems that we discuss in our organizing of foreign domination, land grabbing, and also corruption in the government, the system in place is not going to solve that. And so the true change coming from Bayan, change that is coming from the people, that is where we should put our efforts as workers and young workers and migrant workers that are overseas. It is something truly inspiring to be a part of that change and necessary to be a part of that change, because if not you, then who?
At iyan po ang ating pulso ng migrante sa linggong ito. Maraming salamat sa mga nagbahagi ng kanilang karanasan.
Patuloy po kayong nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante dito sa Toronto's Best Filipino Community Program, Vibe 105. Huwag kayong aalis mga kababayan. Makakasama natin si Dr. Chandu Claver, isang Igorot, physician surgeon, activist, and Indigenous leader from the Philippines. Mapag-uusapan ang tungkol sa Kordilyera Day na darating na sa April 24. Mapapakinggan po natin yan after the break.
And we are back! Ako ulit po si Ems, bringing you this week's Pinoy Tayo segment or Pinoy Talakayan at Usapan. Dito natin mapapakinggan ang talambuhay ng mga kababayan na migrant workers, international students, at iba pa. Halina't pakinggan natin ang fresh na perspectives ng mga kababayang Pilipino. So for this week's featured interview is with Dr. Constancio Chandu Claver. So sino ba po si Dr. Chandu? Si Dr. Chandu is an Igorot physician-surgeon from the Cordilleras region in the Philippines. He is the international spokesperson for the Cordilleras People's Alliance, and 16 years ago, Dr. Claver and his family migrated to Canada as political refugees. Since then, Dr. Chandu continues his advocacy work here in Canada for the sovereignty of Indigenous people everywhere. Tara, let's listen and learn from Dr. Chandu. And thank you for joining us for our segment of Pinoy Tayo. Dr. Chandu, please introduce yourself po, and if so, if you want to tell us your migration story, I'll let you lead the kwentuhan para sa atin.
Okay. So, good evening po sa lahat ng mga nakikinig. Ang pangalan ko po, my name is Chandu Claver. Ako po ay isang katutubong Igorot mula sa rehiyong Kordilyera. Dumating ako dito sa Canada kasama ang mga tatlo kong maliliit na anak noong 2007. We left the Philippines because of violent persecution on myself and my family, which resulted in the killing of my wife by Philippine state agents on July 2006. And because the persecution was continuing and persistent, it threatened yung safety ng aking mga anak. So this prompted me to leave the Philippines and seek political refuge in Canada. So nag-apply kami dito sa Canada as political refugees noong 2007. Now, subsequent investigation and verification of our charges of persecution by the Philippine state was then made by the Canadian Embassy in the Philippines and their intelligence arms. And we presume that Canada was satisfied with the veracity of our claims dahil pinayagan naman kaming maging protected person. Later on, permanent residents and subsequently, Canadian citizens. And so, sa kasalukuyan, ako po ay isang miyembro ng migrante British Columbia at nagsisilbing international spokesperson ng Kordilyera People's Alliance dito sa Canada.
Yes, Dr. Chandu, thank you so much. I did have follow-up questions po. Have you also been a part of the BAYAN Society for Migrant Education? Is that still an affiliation you work with?
Yes. Organizationally as a Filipino, I am a member of a mass organization called the Migrante British Columbia. Okay, but I also in the last since 2019 started a non-profit organization, an institution called the Dap-ayan Society for Migrant Education and Resources, and that's based in Vancouver. And so I would say that I am also a founding member of that and presently an acting coordinator. We are presently working towards handing it over to more younger persons to actually run the institution, and that's where we are at the present.
Maraming salamat po, Dr. Chandu. What made you organize here in Canada, after seeking political refuge with your family?
Kasi kung titingnan natin yung experience ko, siyempre sa Philippines, I was an Indigenous people's rights activist. But when after the incident that happened, we were persecuted and I had to move to Canada. Okay, I had to work. For example, dito sa atin, kung sa mga igorot, marami rin pong mga igorot na nag-migrate dito sa Canada. Pero kung titingnan natin, kung itinutulak ang kawalan ng sapat ng trabaho ang mga karamihan ng mga Pilipinong nangingibang bayan, ganun din po ang mga igorot. And gaya po ng ibang Pilipino, nagbubuo sila ng mga sarili nilang organisasyon na sana'y tutugon sa kanilang mga kailangan. And so, that was where I started. Para bang tumutulong sa mga igorot kung paano sila magsasettle dito. And later on, puta yung mga ibang Pilipino rin. And looking at the way Filipinos are, treated here in Canada, there is a need for organizations Dap-ayan to actually help out. Kasi maraming mga na disenfranchise, maraming mga na-oppressed, mga Pilipino, and most of the time, most Filipinos will try to sort of, parang stomach it. Parang, this is our destiny and we should be living with it. But sometimes that's not right because exploitation is exploitation and it should be recognized as that. And so kailangan talagang we should recognize that, and that is where I came in. I first worked with Canadians who were being exploited, and these were the homeless and the dispossessed. But I also saw what was happening to Filipinos. And so that is why at 2019, we formed the Dap-ayan Society for Migrant Education and Resources that would focus on, for example, temporary foreign workers, live-in caregivers na nangihirapan in terms of dealing with the Canadian system. So, yun yung experience ko.
Maraming salamat, Dr. Chandu. Yes, and I think you mentioned so many points that ring true, right? I wanted to bring us a little back before moving to Canada, and I know that you were also a part of, the Kordilyera People's Alliance, and also a member of the Kordilyera community. Could you tell us or kwentuhan po tayo tungkol po sa experience as a Kordilyera community member and as a Kordilyera People's Alliance organizer?
So, ako po ay surgeon sa Wigan ng Kalinga for 22 years, mula 1984 hanggang 2006. Liban sa ating pagmamahala sa isang maliit na ospital sa sentrong bayan ng Tabo, I also led a team of medical workers in establishing self-reliant community-based health programs in remote areas in the province not adequately reached by health services. Now, through the years, we were able to extend our services to 17 barrios or barangays. Pero sa ating pakikipagsalamuha sa mga katutubong naninirahan sa mga liblib na pook na ito, and even sa pagbibisita ko sa other provinces ng Kordilyera, nakita ko yung pagsasamantala ng Estado at ibang mga grupo, korporasyon, or individual sa kanila. So this led to my development from just a doctor, a physician surgeon, to an Indigenous people's rights and human rights activist. And in the Philippines, I performed this role under the auspice of the Kordilyera People's Alliance, na isang alyansa ng mahigit 100 at 50 katutubong organisasyon sa kabuuan ng rehiyong Kordilyera. So, that's how I developed myself as a member of the Kordilyera community before moving to Canada.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Chandu. How about the experiences currently? Kasi, many people are, I guess, for lack of better words, are becoming aware of Indigenous communities in the Philippines, especially, after Apo Wangod, Vogue cover made rounds in the internet. I know, but in terms of the article of Vogue, little or no mention of the struggle of the Cordillera's people were kind of mentioned in those articles. We know from last month, Kalinga and other Cordillera regions were faced with indiscriminate bombings and shellings from the military. Would you be able to speak towards kind of that situation that the region is facing?
Okay, right now I will try to be brief, right? So the struggle of Igorots goes back hundreds of years. But the oppression of the people by modern states started with the American occupation. And since then, all regimes up to the present time only consider the Cordillera mountain ranges as a resource base. Ang ibig sabihin po nito ay ang tingin ng Estado ay ang Kordilyera po ay pagkukuhanan po lamang ng mga ginto, mineral, ng tubig at kuryente, kahoy at troso, at iba pang enerhiya. This is the main reason that the state has declared the largest part of the Cordillera as public land. Na ibig sabihin po ng public land, hindi po yan pwedeng aritin ng individual. Ang may-ari lang po niya ay ang Estado. And ang Estado lang po ang pwedeng mag-dispose niyan. Ang epekto po nito ay this totally denies the right of Igorots to own the ancestral lands that they have nurtured for generations. Kaya sa ngayon, ibinibigay po ng Estado ng Pilipinas itong mga lupain sa Cordillera, yung mga lupain ng mga Igorot sa mga higanteng mga dayuhang korporasyon para sa pagpapatayo ng malalaking minahan, malalaking dam, at malalaking geothermal plants. And because these projects most often have devastating effects, such as, fish kills, loss of water resources, flooding of traditional burial grounds, mga sakit, community displacement, killings, and disharmony. Igorots have actively resisted these intrusions, which we have termed, ang term po namin dyan, development aggression. In order to quell resistance, the state has used deception through laws and token consultation para lang medyo lumambot ang resistance ng mga tao. But when deception does not work, it uses force and violence, exemplified by yung sinasabi mo, recent bombings of a community in Kalinga a few weeks ago, or extrajudicial killings, or even forced disappearances, which it recently attempted on one of our organizers in Kalinga late last year. So recently though, most recently, this last month, a series of trumped-up charges were filed against 7 indigenous rights and human rights activists and organizers from Ilocos, Kordilyera, and Cagayan. All this had to do with the fact that the Philippine military thinks that the Cordillera is a bastion ng rebel army daw. And also, connected ito sa fact that 2 joint Philippine-American bases are being set up in northern Luzon. One in Ilocos and one in Cagayan. And so, ito yung reason that in the last 2 months, we have come up with a big campaign. We call the Defend the North campaign. And so, yan po ang inaatupag po namin ngayon.
Maraming salamat, Doc Chandu. Would it be possible to repeat the campaign?
The Defend the North campaign that has started from changes in the overt situation in northern Luzon in the past several months. Itong past several months po, ang mga konsentrasyon ng mga atake ng Estado sa mga organizers at mga tao po, mga masa, ay medyo hindi lang na-focus sa Kordilyera, pero it has spread out to the Ilocos and Cagayan areas. And ito po yung reason that we are extending our campaign to sort of try to fight against itong mga pangyayari ito through a campaign to defend not only the Cordillera but also the Ilocos region as well as the Cagayan Valley region from the attacks of the state that are happening at this moment. Yun po yung Defend the North campaign na sinasabi.
Maraming salamat, Doc Chandu. Yes, I thank you for speaking about the Defend the North campaign at also giving us a context of as to how the Philippine state recognizes the Cordilleras as public land, whereas it diminishes the rights, the ancestral rights of the Igorot community to their ancestral land. With that being said, Dr. Chandu, the third question I have is, Cordillera Day is coming up. As sinabi niyo po, bilang isang Igorot po, what does Cordillera Day mean to you?
Ang taunang selebrasyon ng araw ng Cordillera tuwing Abril ay para sa atin, simbolo ng pagkakaisa ng iba't ibang sektor, grupo at individual sa patuloy na paggigiit ng mga katutubo ng Kordilyera sa kanilang karapatan para sa kanilang lupang ninuno at para sa right nila, sa karapatan nila para tahakin ang sarili nilang landas o kaya their self-determination. Now, despite the violent attacks and legal challenges brought upon our people and our leaders, the yearly celebration of Cordillera Day shows that the resiliency and tenacity of people's struggle continues. Yung yearly na celebration natin is a reaffirmation of our reason for struggle. And our reason for struggle is yung defense natin ng aming ancestral land at para sa self-determination, which happens to be the glue that binds us all as one united front. Ibig sabihin, that binds us all, yung mga aliado, yung mga non-Cordillerans, yung mga people who are willing to help us from abroad, all those and the other indigenous peoples from other nations as well as other groups within the Philippines that are supporting this struggle for indigenous peoples. This is the glue that binds us all together as one united front. Also, Cordillera Day also honors all the martyrs who have died in the past in the name of the struggle. Marami nang namatay sa amin dyan, including my wife. Now, remembering them helps strengthen our resolve not to be sidetracked by the deceptions and the violence wielded by the state, but to continue to struggle on until we are able to attain what the indigenous peoples want. Yun po ang Cordillera Day para sa akin.
Wow, Dr. Chandu, that was very powerful. I was moved with what you said, and thank you for giving that comprehensive meaning of what it means, Cordillera means to you. And that concludes part 1 of our interview with Dr. Chandu Claver. Did you know that Cordillera Day is celebrated annually on April 24? And as Dr. Chandu Claver has shared in his interview, Cordillera Day is a commemoration and in honor for those who continue to fight for their ancestral lands in the Cordilleras. So let's continue to raise awareness of what is happening in the Cordilleras region and show support to the Indigenous people who continue to fight for their self-determination and rights to their own ancestral lands. O, nabitin ba kayo sa interview namin ni Dr. Chandu? Well, wag po kayo mag-alala. Next week, Part 2 is on its way. In Part 2, makakasama nyo kami ni Dr. Chandu. Pag-uusapan at magkukwentuhan kami tungkol sa hot topics na nangyayari sa social media ngayon. Katulad ni Apo Wangod, who made the Vogue Philippines magazine cover and became the oldest woman to be featured in Vogue. Diba? At huwag nyo mamimiss, Dr. Chandu has words of wisdom to share with Vanessa Hudgens. At last but not least, Dr. Chandu will also share an analysis as why us Filipinos dito sa Canada should care and should advocate for the Indigenous struggles back in the Philippines and also here in Canada. So stay tuned! At ayun, maraming salamat muli sa inyong pagsusubaybay sa aming segment na ito. Ako muli po si Ems na naghahatid sa inyo ng mga fresh na perspective sa ating Pinoy tayo.
Maraming salamat, Ems, at maraming salamat kay Doc Chandu para sa kanyang pag-share ng kanyang time and experience with us. Nakikinig kayo dito lamang sa Radyo Migrante ng Vibe 105.5 FM. At syempre naman, to stay updated sa happening sa ating community, ito ang mga events at announcements. Bukas, in part of Filcasa's ongoing workshops, Filcasa with Franz Stoner will host a mental health workshop. They will discuss the main issues surrounding anti-Asian racism, discuss self-care practices, and tools for healing, and engage participants in creative art therapy activities.
Waynes, paano ba mag-register ulit?
Mahanap nyo ang registration sa aming link 3 sa aming Instagram.
Sakto.
Para sa buong buwan ng April, ang Filcasa o Filipino Canadian Students Association ay actually magkakaroon sila ng iba't ibang workshop at events tuwing Lunes at Miyerkules. And this is free. This is free for all. Tama. So, abangan nyo lang ang Filcasa rin sa Instagram at para ma-updated kayo sa iba't ibang events nila. Para naman sa April 28, libre din ito. Museum of Toronto will be showcasing an exhibit called Patuloy ang Laban or The Fight Continues, Legacies of Filipino Activism in Toronto.
Sama-sama nating matutunan tungkol sa history of activism in Toronto. There will be free food, performances, and workshops. Antabayanan natin po ito. You can register for free by visiting our linktree in our socials.
Tama. At magkita-kita tayo. Dun yan gaganapin sa St. Matthew's Clubhouse at 450 Broadview Avenue. At lastly, para naman sa April 30 ng Sunday, mayroong malaking rally sa Queen's Park sa Toronto for International Workers' Day na inorganisa ng Labor May Day Committee. So, kita-kits!
Maraming salamat, Waynes, for the community listings. At for this next segment, we are looking for volunteers. So, interesado ba kayo na maging bahagi ng Radyo Migrante? Halina't at sumali sa Radyo Migrante Collective. There are open positions for researchers, scriptwriters, interviewers, co-hosts, editors, and even social media coordinators. Message nyo lang kami sa aming Instagram, Facebook, or email. Mahahanap nyo po kami sa Radyo Migrante or Radyo Migrante Toronto.
At dito nagtatapos ang isa na namang makabuluhang episode ng Radyo Migrante. O diba? Goodbye na agad, kaka-hello pa lang. Sige, kita-kits na lang tayo next week. Ako po ulit si Waynes.
At ako po ulit si Ems. I certainly learned a lot today and I can't wait to learn more sa susunod na linggo.
Sa tulong ng mga kababayan natin na bumubuo ng Radyo Migrante, kay Dr. Constancio Chandu Claver, at higit sa lahat sa inyo pong mga nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante tuwing linggo mula 1:00 hanggang 2:00 ng hapon, maraming salamat po.
Po sa ating huling awitin, pakinggan po natin ulit ang Migranteng Filipino ni Carl Ramirez. Hanggang sa susunod mga kababayan, muli, mabuhay po kayo at mabuhay.
Gawin mo ulit yun.
Grabe, natapilok. Grabe. At para po sa ating huling awitin, pakinggan po natin ang migranteng Filipino ni Carl Ramirez. Hanggang po sa susunod mga kababayan at mga kaibigan, muli,
Mabuhay po kayo at mabuhay ang bayang Pilipinas!
Puso, nag-aalabang puso. Magkakaiba, magkaisa, dahil pare-pareho ang problema. Mas matatag kung tayo ay magsasama.